And we are back today.
Welcome, guys, back to another podcast from In the Works.
Oh my God. Are we going to just start that way now?
I don't know. We
I don't
might
know,
as
but
well.
we should probably find a good way to start, one that's not cheesy, but one that's
I mean, isn't that how people usually?
I hate it. I
Okay,
hate the
well,
cheesiness.
okay, then you figure it out.
Oh,
You
God.
figure it out.
All right. Well, what are we doing here today? What are we thinking about?
We're reading our notebooks. We're
Yes.
thinking about an interesting topic that we've actually had for a while. That we're gonna do. I'm kind of excited about it. It's more of just talking about the question being I guess the topic of growing up into the person your younger self would feel comfortable and safe with. And I thought that was a really interesting topic when I think I was just browsing online when I found it.
Yeah,
So,
I've seen a bunch of TikToks that mentioned it at some
oh,
point.
really?
Yeah, a while ago. And it's just like, oh, this is an example of, how you'd feel safe, with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, something like that. I've just briefly seen it, and then you were like, "Hey, I want to do this as a topic," and it's just kind of been hanging around. And then this week we were like, "Oh,
Funny enough, we made plans to go ahead and like do a little bit of research for this topic. Um, Going online, I couldn't really find anything with these specific words.
same here, same here." So you kind of it kind of provoked, like, you had to think on your own,
Yeah,
initially, which is not a bad thing.
it's not.
Like, that's probably what one should be doing, but the internet is like the brain of all the people who are on the internet, so
It's crazy.
kind of helps. So what was kind of your initial take when you heard that, just to start off, like, without any of the research? What did you hear that and, like, react? How did you react to that when you heard it?
I don't remember where, but I did see in a video, and they posed the question: are you the person you are today? The person, you know, did you grow up into the person you would feel safe with if you were younger? I thought that was interesting because I never thought about that. Things I do now, would I be comfortable? And I feel like it does play a pretty, at least a decent role, because as a child, you don't really know what's happening. And then as you experience life, you kind of gather those things and I guess take on certain
Characteristics?
yes, characteristics as just because of the way you grew up. If you didn't like something, you try and change it.
Yeah, from your experiences, you gotcha.
I thought that was just a really interesting thing. So
do you feel like you're at that place at all? Like, if you, little Usa, were to have to hang around you, do you think you'd feel, safe?
I definitely think so.
Mm-hmm.
Um, at the same time, I know there are a bunch of things, everyone, myself included, I have a lot to work on. So I feel like you generally do grow up to be the person your younger self would be more comfortable with, but there can always be more improvements that you can make yourself feel even more safe if you think back at it.
I feel like if you're just generally trying to not be a terrible person, you'll end up being closer to what you think would be what you'd feel safe with as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one thing. It's like, if you don't try to improve at all, or improve the situation you're in, then you'll probably go down a weird way, and maybe you won't as a kid. You wouldn't feel safe with you now. But I feel like if you generally try to go in the right direction, you'll hit that at some point. So.
Yeah. And not to mention, as a kid, you never really think about, I guess, more things you would when you grow up, like finances and whatnot, because
all your
Yeah,
You only feel the feelings. You only
yeah,
feel the personal interaction. You don't feel the like all the stress of the future and the past and the things you got to do and responsibility. So
exactly. So online, people refer that your self past is still a part of you.
mhm.
Um, they just label it your inner child. So
Mm.
I looked up. There's
Inner
actually a
child.
definition
Yeah.
on the Merriam-Webster website.
Ah,
Like, I was
is that a
surprised.
good dictionary? I don't know.
I have no idea.
Okay.
I just know it's a place to find definitions. So,
Gotcha.
but it says, well, it is a noun, and it's the childlike, usually hidden part of a person's personality that is characterized by playfulness, spontaneity, and creativity, usually accompanied by anger, hurt, and fear, attributable to childhood experiences. So I thought it was just kind of.
So what did you gain from the inner child thing? Like, is that
Well, I did a little bit more.
okay?
Not really.
Take me through your thought process here. When you heard the inner child thing, where did your mind go then?
I have no idea what that
You-
was. I was like, I don't know what this means.
Did you go like, hey, like, oh, my inner child, and you tried to identify it in yourself? Like, what is my inner child?
Yeah, no, that's
Because
I'd
I've
say
heard
yeah.
that one too.
Um, but I did a little bit more. I don't know if it was like the same. I don't know if I got this different definition from the same, the Merriam-Webster, or just a different place that
Mhm.
kind of generalized it. But it said, inner child is part of your psyche that retains innocence, creativity, awe, and wonder towards life. So I kind of read that and it felt like it clicked a little bit more.
So I guess that's all the things that doesn't include responsibility, having to deal with
Yes.
shitty things.
Yeah. So that was my thought process with that. Not anything huge, but
Yeah.
yeah, it definitely makes you think about yourself more.
Mhm.
So I thought that was very interesting because don't really, I'm not very mindful of myself, I guess.
I would beg to differ on that. Like I feel like your mindfulness isn't specifically to what people would say I'm being mindful right now, but self-awareness is something you do have enough of at least.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't just shut it down and be like, oh yeah, I don't have any mindfulness.
I guess it's more just something I can work on because I have I have trouble connecting with my own feelings and having to put it into words. Because as you notice with our podcast with Cody, he was able to do it perfectly. He was able to put his feelings into words and even my feelings into words when I couldn't. And
Damn, he knew your feelings.
that's just kind of skill. And I'm kind of jealous that he's so in tune with his emotions because I have such a hard time doing it, and I get confused on why I get angry sometimes, and this and that, so forth.
Yeah, it's certainly something practiced. People they don't pop out just like I know my feelings. I mean, usually that's part of parents trying to parent their child is how to articulate your feelings. Like you're feeling this, what does that mean? How do you react to it? Because like your feelings are your body that's talking to you, and so you got to listen and be like, okay, I know you're like this right now. This is the reason why. Maybe we can adjust. Stuff like that. So it's not something that just like boom, you have it.
So when it comes to feelings, is it people always connect feelings with the heart, but in a way, is it also a something in your brain, a neurologic? Like
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
so
There's a lot that happens.
I just don't understand if that's the case. When people say, when people say, listen to your heart or think with your brain, that type of thing, because they're generally kind of the same thing.
That's exactly right.
Because
Like,
your brain is telling you what you're feeling, not
mhm.
necessarily your heart, because your heart just has one purpose and to really pump blood,
well,
right?
well, yeah, but your heart and your brain have a lot of, well, your brain is all neurons, and then your heart has a whole bunch of neuroconnectivity. And it's one of the first things to form with your brain, too. So, in a sense, it's all one system.
Ah,
People tend to separate the brain and the body, but the brain and the body are very intermingled and mixed. So, it's to say, oh, you got to think with your head. You can't, feel your emotions. Well, your emotions are part of that. You just um, it's different reactions to things. So when people say think with your brain, it's try to form some sort of logical conclusion. When people say, think with your heart or lead with your heart, it's more of like the feeling or the emotion, like I like doing this, I'm going to keep doing this, or some sort of subconscious level type stuff. But to separate the brain and the body is a very bad idea, because everything's interconnected. And when you feel things, I mean, that's neurochemically and also things happening in your body. It's all connected. It's all part of the same system. So it's you as kind of a conscious, logical processing being. You have to be able to identify, you know, what those things are and process. When my body does this, when my brain and my body are doing this, what does that actually mean? Is it the proper way to react? Things like that. So it's something that's you could kind of separate, but they're inseparable. They affect each other.
that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, they drive each other. In fact, most of your habits and the things you think about are driven by things you're not fully aware of or conscious of.
So feelings are just ties with your brain.
Yeah, very much so. Brain in your body.
That's interesting. I learned something new. I just never understood it. Follow your heart. Do what your heart tells you. I'm just like, what does that mean?
Dude, your heart rhythm, I mean, when you get stressed, your heart, it feels like it's beating out of your goddamn chest, like you can't control it. And you're like, ah. But, if you're chill and calm, you're going to have, a nice and even heartbeat. It's not going to be flying out of your chest or anything. And you feel those things. And your brain makes that happen, and vice versa. Your heart makes other things happen. Kind of like you can help control your heart rate with your breath. Like you could consciously take a breath and then it'll affect your heart rate. Like things, it's very intermingled.
I've had a lot of anxiety, so
Yeah.
that really hits. That really
Take
hits.
some breaths, man.
I actually tried some of those breathing exercises in high
Mhm.
school because my social anxiety was so bad that I almost got expelled. Um, so uh, I'm pretty sure one of my friends found a breathing exercise for me, and she told me to go ahead and try it. Breathe in for a certain amount of seconds, hold it for a certain amount of seconds, breathe out for a certain amount of seconds. I would do that, and it still wouldn't help. um, so what would happen during that process was me breathing in would speed up my heart rate. Holding it would keep my heart rate at that level, and then breathing out would still generally keep it at that level until I don't take in another breath. So between the exhale
Mm-hmm.
and then waiting to get another breath in. And I've never had a slowed down heartbeat or heart rate. um,
From breath.
yeah, from breathing.
So-
I've tried multiple. I don't know if it's my brain being too anxious, so it doesn't work, or I just do it wrong.
Could be that, but I know there is physiologically when I don't know which way it goes, but when you breathe in, like diaphragmatic breathing, I mean, the reason why your lungs inflate is because your diaphragm, creates kind of like I want to say low pressure system, right? And it draws air in.
Mm.
Same thing with your heart and blood, I believe. And like I said, I don't remember how the rates match up to that, but it actually, if I'm not mistaken, expands your heart a little bit. So when you breathe in, it gets a little bigger. And I don't know how that goes with heart rhythm, but I know that's how it affects your heart rhythm when you breathe. And you could very much be psyching yourself out. I mean, there's a lot you could do mentally to release, stress hormones and such, and continually keep your heart rate up. So,
Yep.
it's a practice. It's certainly
It is a practice. I am very impressed with people who can do that.
Oh, did you have more going off of that?
No, that was it.
Okay, so when I approached this question, growing up into the person your younger self would be safe with, I kind of had to question what makes a kid feel safe around somebody. And the first thing I went to was risk, the idea of risk, and how risk is, situation involving exposure to danger. And to feel safe, you pretty much want to either eliminate risk, or you need to be assured that the risk isn't as risky as you thought, or that, you'll be caught if you fall. Like if you're a kid, I feel like those are the things you think about when things are risky. And to relate that to a person, you have to have trust in that person. So it would be trust that that person will catch you if you fall. And the definition: trust, firm belief in the reliability, truth, ability, or strength of someone or something. So you got to trust in an individual to help mitigate your risk in order to feel safe. So when I thought about that, I was like, okay, like what kind of person would look like that? And I instantly thought of like a good leader. What would a good leader look like? Because when there's a good leader, I mean, even if there is risk, you can still feel safe. So it's almost like if you have a really strong father figure in your life, like things could go, bad, but he's still going to be there. He's going to help you through. He'll show you a direction you can take. He's not going to do the shit for you, but it's someone to go back to, someone to rely on, someone you can lean on, someone who's going to be in your corner. And that's kind of what would make you feel safe. So I kind of just looked into some things relating to leadership, as far as like a kid would think about, right? Like not what he would think about, what he would notice. So one of the first things was, humility, the humility of a person. So not everything's about them. They're not boasting all the time. They're not gonna, just be like, hey, look at me. Ugh, you. No, they're gonna, no matter how good they are in their place, they're not gonna boast about it. They're gonna raise you up, So that's someone you're not gonna have to compete with ego wise. So, because as a kid, you got a big fucking ego, and anytime there's competition, that's instability, right? Like in that sense. So you won't have to worry about that. Another thing is respect. Do they respect you as a person? And again, as a kid, you're not thinking like, oh, is this person going to respect me? You just see their actions. Are they respecting me? You don't hear those. In your mind, you don't hear the word respect. You may not even know what that is, but you understand when somebody's not respecting you. Maybe they're ignoring you. They treat you like you don't exist. I wouldn't feel safe around somebody who doesn't acknowledge my existence, someone who just thinks I'm not there. So that was another one. Listening. When you're talking, as a kid, like, is somebody just gonna shut you down, or do you feel heard at all? Like, if you really have a problem and you gotta, you know, you're shouting, talking, and nobody hears you, you feel like you're alone, and you feel unstable, therefore, unsafe. So, if my older self, what I strive to be, strive to listen. That's what I would strive to do in that situation as well. In owning mistakes, don't pass them off to the kid for things that you're actually, responsible for. So the kid doesn't know, you know, things that'll happen. They haven't been around the world a lot. They don't know, if you mix this with this, it'll explode. They have no idea. So when something happens, don't just blame it on them. Oh, why didn't you know? They don't fucking know. They don't know yet. So mistakes, they're on you. Hey, that happened. Let's give it a, educational thing. Like, here's why it happened. Let's try not to have that happen again. But that way they don't feel attacked for every single thing that goes wrong. Right. And then allow them the success. So when things do go right, you kind of raise them up. And that's kind of when we were talking about relationships and friendships, that kind of that happiness, that positivity, that's like a foundation. Like when things go well, an egotistical person will just kind of take it. And it's like, it's because of me, not you. So the kid will kind of feel left behind, left out. But, if you did something, then, hey, good job. You made this happen. Awesome. They get self-confidence out of that.
Yeah.
And being decisive. So that would just be, the kid knows there's a direction. He knows that, no matter what, even if a situation is risky, if there's something weird going on, he's not left stuck in the water. There's somebody who's there in his corner, or leading him, just, showing him how to go. So they're not sitting there in instability. So they feel secure in a direction. And also not being extreme. So extreme anger, or, over niceness, dude, you'll be seen through. And if it's like extreme anger, the kid will be scared.
Mm-hmm.
They won't feel safe. But I feel like with all of this, it's one of the things that I thought about when it's like, would I feel safe with my older self, is, am I a leader enough that a kid could see it easily? And in all these situations, would I be able to react in the proper way? And not only, if something goes wrong, be able to protect them, but if something goes wrong and I'm not around, would I be able to, guide my younger self enough so that when I'm not around, they'll be fine with the risk. They can conquer the risk on their own. So that was kind of my take on the whole thing. It was more of a, like, I have to be a leader myself. I can't. I have to strive to be a leader now if I want my younger self to be safe, or to feel safe with me.
That makes a lot of sense. I want to say I do feel the same way. I agree with a lot of stuff you say, actually. And I love how you went that route, because I kind of went the other way.
Oh, really?
So I thought that was really interesting. I went more towards, would you agree that like feeling safe is like a physical and emotional thing, generally with your family? See if you feel safe or not in that environment.
Yeah. I feel like, that is your, because you can be in a dangerous situation and feel safe. So that's a feeling.
So mine's going to take a little bit darker turn, but instead of more of what things can really, there are a lot of right things that can happen when it comes to like your parents and how they raise you and how they make you feel safe and whatnot. But they won't always do that. There might be one or two things that just slip by.
Oh, shortcomings.
Yeah, shortcomings.
People are people, they're human.
No, there's also people who don't really aren't won't say as fortunate, but they are, maybe that is the word.
They're
But
in a
not
lot
as
more risky situations.
in terms of parental figures.
Ah, yeah.
So some people may not have, a mother. Some people may not have father. Some might not have both and just have grandparents. That type of stuff. That can affect you very heavily. Um, so if you're thinking of it from that standpoint, it's just I want to say it's a bit more difficult. Obviously, I wouldn't understand because I'm not in that position, but it's just another thing to look at, which I thought was interesting because you went with how, being a leader for your younger self, whereas this is more of, hey,
How not to fuck up?
but not
No.
really, not how to fuck up, just more of, I want to say signs. And
Signs you're not doing what you're supposed to, or not being.
pretty much it's the way I wanted it to work was just things to help identify if you have been in those situations or in those things, and if you were able to overcome it or you fixed it while you were growing up.
Mm.
Um, so, some things that children would grow up feeling unsafe would be having strict parents. For example, my parents were strict. I was never really having to show emotion or given emotion. So that was a shortcoming on their end because I didn't know how to process my emotions. And other people have different things like having opinions is bad. Parents will automatically shut it down, or someone in their family will just automatically shut it down. I'm saying family just because as a child, that's who you're really around most of the time.
Yeah.
So I just want to make that clear.
It's not necessarily your
Yeah.
family, just
But yeah, children being punished when they speak up or act differently because they want to, play, have fun, that sort of stuff. Just very strict parents that won't let them really do anything, be spontaneous, show any anger or joy, and just overall being shamed.
So
by
that
their
would be like
parents.
contradicting the inner child, like
Yes.
shoving that shit down.
Yeah.
So in that definition, the hidden part would probably be the part that, or the reason why it would be hidden is because of things like this.
Yeah, it just feels like you're covering it up and then you're just letting it sit there. But all that is just bottled up emotion at that point. So, it it will break. You will break, doing that. But pretty much just a lot of just verbalizing and just lowering that child's ego and
You mean self-esteem or
yes,
something like
self-esteem.
that? Yeah.
There you go. Thank you. Self-esteem. And it just really hurts. And that could lead to multiple problems too. So I just thought it was interesting that he decided to take
two different routes,
which is nice.
So
it's nice.
I kind of have this. All right, I'm just thinking of this thing. Like when we say younger self, we think of like a kid and like being a kid.
Yes.
Like ourselves as a child.
Yes.
But since we're always, life isn't, a bunch of sections. It's one long spaghetti noodle. So we are that kid plus more.
Yes.
So in the future, when we say this question, are we growing into the person our younger self would be safe with? That's almost like a big loop pushing us forward in a sense that like, how do you feel now? Would you feel safe with you right now? Would you, if you would, or you're like, oh, there are a couple things like shortfalls. And then you're like, okay, becoming what your younger self would feel safe with. That's almost like a loop to push you forward. So now you change, you would kind of identify that, practice methods, things like that to make a positive change. So you're pretty much propelling yourself forward in your growth by proposing um, things that already exist, but you're thinking of it in a different timeline. So you that inner child is still in you and you still feel those things. So you're basing it off of now, even though you think you're basing it off of, years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really just a big, self-reflection question on
Yes.
what am I doing going forward, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And not so much as how am I in the past.
I think, like you said, it's more of a question to try and better yourself and reach your ideal self.
Mm.
And obviously that takes time. And I think that's the main point of the question, at least.
Yeah. It's kind of interesting though, to, like you said, like reaching your ideal self. That means, what you saw, like you were a better judge of character in a way as a kid, is what you're saying,
Mm-hmm.
almost in a way. Because it's like, how would you feel safe with this individual? Well, if that's supposed to be my ideal self, then, why can't I just think of that now without bringing up, me as a child? But you as a child don't know things that are going on. You in the future knows things that are going on. And so it's just kind of like a guide in a sense.
Yeah. So part of the stuff I was saying were kind of ways would probably feel made to feel unsafe.
Mm-hmm.
I also mentioned that there were also, I guess, a reaction to that, like what happens after with all that negativity type of kind of just shutting down and keeping to yourself. And it's exactly what it is. It's just bottling up emotions. People go to, addictions. They like to avoid conflict. They have abandonment issues, issues with saying no, feeling not good enough, self criticism, like harsh self criticism, anxiety about thinking about new things, new possibilities, new things to do, overall people pleaser, and just have a really hard time of letting go. And after reading all this online and writing it down,
You're like, oh my God, that's me. No.
literally just self-reflecting. This is just a big self-reflecting thing. And I think it's so interesting because I don't really do it a lot. But a lot of those really hit home.
In some way or another.
Yes.
I mean, you may not be an addict
I
or
will
anything,
say,
but
out of the things I listed, I'm probably not like two of those things.
oh damn.
Yeah. And I definitely grew up less to do, these issues that I once had, like people pleasing and saying no. I'm more comfortable with being myself and being able to say no, even though I still struggle with it.
Yeah.
So
it almost seems like with those things, those characteristics mean like you don't feel safe assuming risk, because new things that make you anxious, it's because there might be risk involved, maybe you turn to addiction because of, something that scares you, something you don't want to do, something you're running away from because it's risky. So I guess it's like having trouble navigating through risk.
mm-hmm.
And so like when you're being a model for, your younger self, it's about, just showing yourself how to assume risk and be okay.
I think a big part of it also is having your younger self be okay with being yourself instead of, like I said, it's more of a being closed off and to yourself rather than being open up and being yourself, enjoying what you want and being who you want to be rather than trying to be someone else wants you to be.
Yeah.
Because like I said, I've had a issue with that with my parents before. I want to say I can't really say I'm just going to say I know my friends have issues with that.
Hmm.
So it's just a big thing. It happens to a lot of people, and it just kind of sucks.
I do feel like it happens a lot more lately because I mean nowadays we spend um, less time around like good role models and figures. I mean, school isn't always the best at being a role model. Some
Mhm.
things you got to learn from your parents or some good figures. And when you do school all the time now, and both your parents are working, you don't really have these individuals who would be a guide to your younger self. So I think now with people kind of being pulled in many directions and not being able to be around their family or role models or just others in general, they're not drawn to others in
Mhm.
general, like that's kind of a detriment in that sense.
Real quick,
Yeah.
don't answer if you're not comfortable with it. But in terms of your family, how safe did you feel as a child? Like between just a scale 1 to 10?
um it would totally depend on the kind of the time frame,
Mm-hmm.
because there was a time where my parents were getting divorced and it was not always the nicest environment to be.
Yes.
Also, at school with little kids or whatever, or middle school when everyone's all hormoned up, like it's not always the safest place to be in a sense. Like things are
Mm-hmm.
very shaky and unsteady.
Mm-hmm.
I would say I felt safe with some things, um, but not everything. And it's looking back kind of in my before high school, or there were some spotty parts in high school, but um, kind of before that, around when all those family issues were going on, I did not feel the safest overall in the
Okay.
sense. Not like I was in danger of being harmed or anything.
Yeah.
I mean, like, being steady, the feeling of being steady.
Yeah.
So I felt very unsteady in a lot of environments because things changed all the time and there are always charged
Mm-hmm.
um, situations. So,
So when you're for who you are now, it's pretty much just repeating the question, but as you are now, if you were to say just go back in time and you were to guide yourself through that, do you think you would be able to do it very well?
I would. I mean, that's like raising a child. Like,
That's true.
I would want to slap the shit out of myself, but it's all coming down to like that patience, that humility, like all those things I was talking
Yeah,
about earlier.
I'd slap
Um,
myself.
I would have to. It would be certainly an exercise because I know exactly how I was feeling at those times, and I had people telling me good things, like these things that I'm speaking about right now. I've
Mhm.
seen these things. I've witnessed these things. There are plenty of role models in my life modeling these things. So I would want to say yes because I would, like confidence in myself and these things I know. But then again, I've never had to parent a child.
Mhm.
So it would be something I'd have to figure out, I'd say. But I'd say
You're just gonna
generally,
have a child and just
yeah,
test it.
test it. Well,
Just in
isn't that
case
what
you.
it is? I mean,
That's
that's
true.
also what you're doing with kids, I guess, is trying to.
I feel bad for people now, just in general.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, people just pop out kids just to try stuff.
Oh, yeah. But
Oh
I would
gosh.
say overall, I probably would. Although, that would be a very odd situation. They should probably make a movie about that. But like, how the hell would that family life work when it's like, hey, I'm that guy,
I'm
10,
I'm this 4-year-old
13 years
kid.
later, or even, 18 years later. And how the parents would be like, okay, what, like, there's a lot more
Like,
going on here. Like,
what's
I wouldn't be able to
happening?
chill in that area. But, all that aside, I feel like I feel like I would be both fascinated and weirded out by myself. I'd be like, what the fuck? But also like, oh, that's a little, it's interesting, you know?
That's funny.
Like, how's that going on? Like, even just with exercise,
Uh-huh.
like just the amount I'm running now, even though it's not a crazy amount, as a kid, I'd be like, what? Who the hell would do that?
Yeah,
like,
that's crazy.
crazy. Or every day, you know, exercising, even though as a kid you're running around getting a shit ton of exercise. But if
Yeah.
you told me like, hey, avoid this food, you know, or this person avoids this food and exercises this much, as a kid, I'd be like, you're stupid. Like, you're an idiot. You don't know what you're like. Are you kidding me? That's so weird.
Yeah, just you should just
So
do whatever you want to do. Just
I feel
eat
like
whatever you want to eat.
yeah, but I know I'm a very curious person and explorative with ideas sometimes. And so I feel like I'd be fascinated with myself to bounce off things like, hey, what do you think about this random thing? And then I could be like, I know what you're thinking and I have the perfect answer for that. Or, you know, just be humble. I don't have the answer for that, but here's something I do know about it, you know? So I feel like overall it'd be weird, but I think generally, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Same question applied to you?
Well, I wouldn't say I felt the safest either in terms of I just my emotional and psychological well-being. Just my parents were never there for me. They were always working. I was pretty much to myself.
Would you say just emotionally there for you?
Like my parents?
Yeah.
No, I didn't speak to them about my feelings or anything at all.
Gotcha.
So it was just a lack of communication, lack of physical touch. Pretty much, it just felt like a huge absence of a person, even though they were still here, still living in the same house with me, that type of stuff. It just felt like a huge absence, and I didn't really have anything.
Oh, damn.
So I think this, I think that's why whenever I listed a bunch of those signs that, you know, or possibilities that of signs for a child and to work through, it just a lot hit with me because my parents were never around. I wanted to get their attention, so I would always try to please them. I was a people pleaser. I try to please everyone around me because that's what I was kind of, I guess, grew up doing. I a lot of anxiety, as you know. I always, I'm always hard on myself. I am admitting a lot, but you know how hard I can be on myself, and I didn't realize that was a possibility for I guess connecting with being neglected. I never knew that kind of went hand in hand. But like I said, I all my emotional needs were kind of ignored. I always had to hide or avoid them. And I wouldn't say I have any mental or physical illnesses because of it. However, in high school, it did affect me physically, my anxiety. I wouldn't say that goes quite hand in hand, even though anxiety goes with it.
It's like
it just
one of the
keeps
pieces,
stemming. Yeah.
one of the pieces to the puzzle. It's not the whole story, but it might be a little bit of it.
Definitely. But I always had high expectations for myself and always felt like I was falling short. I wanted to bring, best grades, be a perfectionist, be what I thought my parents wanted me to be, and be kind to everyone and be, selfless. I wanted to be there for everyone, which was very unhealthy because it's just unhealthy.
Well, yeah, if you give yourself to everyone, there's nothing left.
Yeah, and that stemmed off of not just being neglected, really. So it's definitely a lot. It goes into, I wouldn't say I necessarily have an eating disorder, but I do struggle with eating. And that's also one of the things about being neglected. I wouldn't say, like I said, I wouldn't say I had that. And it stems off addiction and stuff. But I just kind of hit a lot with it, which
It's
really
giant,
sucks.
giant therapy
It
session.
really sucks.
Hey, here's one thing I've learned though is just because there's pain doesn't mean it's bad. Sometimes feeling the pain and just like processing it is one of the best things you can like do, hands down. So, things that suck, like having to think about it or be like, oh fuck, that's me. That's always a good thing in a sense, because then you can, it's that awareness, and then you can move from there.
Yeah.
So it's
this is just a big like fuck you.
So when you were researching this, you were just like, oh God, like were you going through a bunch of mental things like, oh man, who am I?
No, pretty much. I was just writing stuff down. I was like, that's me. That's me. That's me. Because oh yeah, I've been neglected in these different ways.
When I was going through all this, I was like, oh man, these are all traits I have to work on in some way. And I could almost point to specific instances where I'm like, oh man, I really needed humility there, or I just needed to listen, or I needed to own up to those mistakes, or I just needed to make a decision, things like that. And one of the things is functioning through risky things. And that's one of the hardest things for me, is like, things are always going to be a risk, uncertain, and going forward, like that's like my biggest thing. It's just,
I think one of the things
being steady in the unknown.
One of the things with risk is it's kind of hard to measure the size of the risk. So even a small risk could still feel very big, and a big risk
exactly
feel minuscule. But if you end up doing it and it not working out, then it's just a big.
Yeah, you could do something really risky, had no idea that was risky.
Yeah.
And be like, oh, learn about it later. Go, what?
Blows up in your face. Yeah.
Yeah. But, or you could, some tiny thing. And I guess that's one thing that people struggle with, is there's a tiny thing and it seems very risky. It seems like a big danger when it's not.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel that way with a lot of things, especially after I do them. I thought all these things that I started, I was like, oh, this ain't shit. Like, so that's my biggest thing, is like thinking things are a big risk all the time. And sometimes they are, and sometimes they're just not really. So it's one of those things to just fight. That's, I don't know, man. Yeah. So I really like that question, because it's self-reflection, but you have to think about how you were, and then how you are going forward. Because once you go, like, say you were a dangerous person, or you're a dangerous person right now, in a sense, like you abuse, say, alcohol a lot, and it gets you aggressive or something, and you think back, like, would I feel safe as a kid? And you remember this alcoholic guy that was the same way, that you didn't feel safe around. And you're like, oh shit, that's me. Like that's me. And then you got to go forward with that. Like,
yeah.
Like that's sort of, it's a good question. It's one I almost was like, whatever, man. Like, why are we doing this? But I feel like you could really dive into it.
No, definitely. At first I put it down. I was thinking, oh yeah, that's gonna be something light. That's gonna be something light. It's gonna be easy. It's gonna be like, what, 10-minute conversation.
Yeah.
And then you dig deeper into it, and there's just so much more, so many different layers, and so many different ways to look at it. Because your point of view or your research was differed from my research, and
I enjoy that. Like the different, like I didn't really disagree with anything you said, but just the perspective it came from, it kind of meshed the two together, and it gave a broader insight. And
Cody was right. We do work well together.
But
shout out to Cody.
Dang.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh no.
You're gonna say something. I interrupted
I
you.
totally forgot. But wow, you threw me way off with that. I don't
With
remember.
what part?
I think you just said like Cody or something.
Oh yeah, the
Damn it, Cody. It does feel nice. Oh yeah, I sat down at the computer and I thought, this is going to be 20 minutes I'll be spending on here. I'll probably write a couple things down, and I ended up spending 40 minutes on there. And I was looking, I'm like, I didn't even write that much down. Like, I felt like I could have written so much more. And so I almost feel like this is just the briefest, like slightest overview that one can have on this question.
Oh no, definitely.
Because you could go up into all sorts of developmental stuff.
There's a lot that goes into it.
Yeah.
But I did research for, I want to say it just not even really research. I was just reading on it, and I took an hour of my day just to do it, and I felt like I was just scratching the surface.
Yeah, and one thing I really want to see, I would love to hear like a father's perspective on that question, because when you have kids, and I feel like it's almost like that question in a way put into practice. I mean, it's a little different because they're not the exact same as you. Kids are different, but a lot of things will overlap with raising a child, I feel like, and that would be something I would love to either ask my dad or my brother or something and just be like, hey, what do you think of this from the perspective of being a parent?
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of facets you could go down. And so I ended up enjoying the question a little more than I thought I would.
No, definitely.
So
Same. Likewise.
So it ends up being a positive thing in the end.
It definitely was a thinker.
Yeah.
And definitely a self-reflector. It was just very different from what we usually do. I think it was just, well, not very different, but it's more of
a little directed.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's that direction, man. It's that decisiveness.
Yeah, definitely.
But
I would leading.
Yeah. Okay. So if you're on Spotify or YouTube or whatever, I mean, Spotify, it might not be able to do this, but like on YouTube, I would love more questions kind of like this, or ideas or topics that kind of go in that manner, that self-reflection, that those deep thinker thoughts where you're like, oh man, who am I type deal. So if you have any, I mean, just put it in the comments below.
Make sure to tweet at us.
See it. Yeah,
so we don't really use our Twitter.
We need to start using it.
We can check it. At least still check it.
At least comments on YouTube, and just give me something you got on just a question you thought about that really kind of put you down for a while. Just like, oh man, and I really got to think about this.
If you're listening on Spotify, I think our YouTube is / is it just in the works, or is there something else?
I think it's just in the works. But if you look up in the works pump cover, don't click on the video, just click on our channel. It'll be a cringy ass video, but you could click on the channel that way and find this video. I mean, we gotta end up being searchable at some point.
We do.
But yeah, pop it in the comments, and I would love to read those questions and potentially have them as future topics. So I guess with that, I mean, do you have any other words?
I guess even on our some of our TikToks, since we don't get a lot of comments, you could always just comment there too, and we'll be able to see it.
Oh yeah, that's
we'll get notifications for this.
TikTok, YouTube. I guess if we get we get notifications for Twitter? Do you have Twitter on your phone? I don't.
I ended up turning it off. Maybe we can't do Twitter just quite yet.
Yeah, not yet. Maybe in the future.
Maybe we need a work phone.
Oh God. Or we just need to do better work with social media.
Yeah. Maybe we just need to get good.
Yeah, my younger self would be disappointed in my lack of social media skills.
To be fair, we put a lot on ourselves.
I mean, for the time that we have, I guess, yeah.
Because we have roughly 6 to 8 hours a week.
Yeah, and I realized going into summer, even though it was one class, man, I still just, it's the same amount of time and almost even less because of some other goals. I'm like, But anyway, all right. So
But yeah, there you have it.
yeah, growing into the person your younger self would feel safe with.
Thank you guys for listening. Thank you guys for watching. Like we said, be sure to leave a comment
Like, subscribe.
about questions that we should go over. You know, give us brain thinkers.
Yeah, I want a brain massage.
Okay.
All right. Anyway.
Okay. Well, bye guys.
Bye.